på min plads, og så følger med det op for.
Ja, så kan du altid, hvis der sker
jeg
noget. Så er det bare fuld 4 springer ned. Ja. Ja. Ja, jeg ringer mig. Vil du sige noget af den her?
Ja.
Ja.
Det er jo lige om 10 minutter. Ja. Du skal lige se, hvordan jeg sender og slukker den. Den er off lige nu.
Den er tændt. Nej, ja, det er fordi, der går lige det er lidt for sent.
Det er heller ikke kommet over det.
Ja, vent nu. Ja, der går.
Der er som regel 14-15 sekunder chance på.
Det er sidste chance, hvis du vil introducere.
Det er fordi, den er muted.
Ja, nu kan vi høre mig. Garanteret.
Nu går der lige lidt.
Ja, nu går lige lidt, inden det kommer igennem, ja. Men skal nok finde på noget. Ja, det kan sagtens sige noget igen. Det burde virke. Jeg har i hvert fald tændt for den, så der burde være lyd igennem. Men det går, hvis vi skruer op for den, den, ikke? Virker det? Er der lyd igennem?
So I think we're ready to start now. Welcome everybody. There you are.
Hello.
Hello, this is Lars. Welcome everybody, both here physically on Nyborg, but also on NNE's YouTube channel where we are live streaming right now. NNE and Automation and IT, we are really proud to this event, to present this event. Lars Klint is coming here and sharing something about Microsoft HoloLenses on drugs.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I need to share a few words with you about Lars. Lars is a what you call a Microsoft MVP, meaning a most valuable professional. And I looked up on Microsoft homepage to look what they to read what they say about you, and I quote: "Lars is the loudest Windows Phone guy in Australia."
I may or may not have written that.
Did you actually write it yourself?
I did.
Oh, so cool. So, but anyway, Lars is going to share with us within the next hour something about the Microsoft HoloLenses.
Indeed.
And you will also share a little bit about your background.
I can, yes, I will.
And the reason why you're standing here today. I think, personally speaking, I have been looking very much forward to this event for two reasons. First of all, there's of course the professional side.
Mm-hmm.
What could this potentially mean to our industry? But also on a more personal side, because I believe this technology potentially could really make a difference for all of us. So I think we will see something that in the future will make a huge change for many of us. So for these two reasons, I've really been looking forward to meet you. I should just a few practical comments. During the session, you're more than welcome to ask questions for Lars. I think he will also encourage you to do so.
Don't worry. I'll get you.
I'll get you. But he will also be available for a short time after the presentation, maybe 15 minutes for half an hour. So you're also welcome to join him after the presentation. So with these words, very welcome.
Thanks.
To Denmark, all the way from Australia.
Indeed.
Give a warm welcome to Lars.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, yes, I am Lars, and I am Dansk, but I'm going to do this in English, all right? So, just a quick question first. Does anyone here know what the HoloLens is? Okay, that's about kind of 15% of you. Has anyone tried developing for the HoloLens? So I know this is kind of a coding question. It's like 2 people. Okay, that's cool. So I'm going to show you, there is going to be some code in here, but there's also going to be some shenanigans, because I brought toys, right? It's here. Yeah, I did bring it. So I'll give you a bit of a background of what the device is and how you use it, but also what it isn't, and then we'll try to combine that into how it relates to you guys in the pharmaceutical industry. And I just learned that it's not called pills, because I said pills and I got a stare. It's tablets, is that right? See, I thought tablet was that, but there you go. That's just me. All right. So yes, I do live here. I've been there for about 14 years now or something. So I'm almost more Aussie than I am Danish. And we like tourists. Have anyone been to Australia at all? There's like a few people. Yeah, exactly, right. So you'll be very familiar with these things. We do warn people about things, and it's a pleasant place to be. I especially like this one. This is the fire danger rating. It goes from low to high. Like step 2 is high, because everything burns. That's just the nature of it, all right? And once you get sort of settled with that, you'll be right. So now you think it's summer here. Yesterday was like a nice Aussie spring day. Because generally when we have summer, we kind of go outside in a suit and it looks kind of like this, right? I was saying to Morten before that summer only really starts once we have the 5th day over 40 degrees. It does get hot. So just today's like, it's winter. It's pleasant. Now, having said that, we do have ski areas. Did anyone know you can ski in Australia? See, there's 2 people or something. There's a hand there behind the pillar. The pillar has a hand. I will try and move around so you can see me. But yeah, this is 90 minutes from my house. So we do have snow as well. So we get all of the extremes that you are somewhat familiar with here as well. All right. Please, please, please do not be these guys, okay? Do not be the North Korean assembly, because I would much rather that you jump up and down and say, hey, look at me, I have a question, pick me, okay? And I will get questions from you. You cannot be a Norwegian audience. It's the first dig. No, I really, really encourage questions, because if we have a discussion, that means, well, you're listening, but you're also kind of engaged, and you're not just sitting there kind of just being spoken at, right? I want to speak with you. So please ask questions. If you run, over time, I'll kind of maybe cut some questions off, but please do raise your hand or yell out or whatever. Okay, so where do we start? Currently, there's some people here that are developers. How many developers? About half or a quarter? It's like 4 hands. Really? Surely there's more. But talking about development or software in general, it is kind of a little bit monotonous, if I'm honest. So we have mobile and tablet and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you can take it with you. You can take your phone with you, but it still is a flat screen, right? It's a 2D experience. You may argue, yeah, but you can do augmented reality, rah, rah. Yeah, but you're still looking at a screen. You still got to carry a screen with you, okay? Desktop development is the same, whether it's web or it's, Windows applications, whatever it might be, it's still 2D. It still is a flat experience for the user. And that's okay. We're used to it. We know it. We're good at it. Even gaming, to a large extent. By the way, that was the only pharmaceutical game I could find. Does anyone know what that is? So, there's 2 people. Okay. Yeah, it's called Big Pharma. Okay, whatever that is. Looks like kind of a SimCity for pharmaceutical industries or something. But I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure how it works. But even with gaming, right, people sit down. Mostly they sit on a couch and have a controller, or it's on a keyboard or something. It's still very much a stationary, sitting down kind of 2D experience. And then collaboration, of course. If you want to collaborate with someone, it's still, for whatever reason, collaboration images always have people pointing at a screen. I don't know, do you do that? Oh, sure, point at a screen. But collaboration is still around a screen. It's still around a 2D experience. You kind of get where I'm going with this, right? Now, there are different digital realities, or XR as it's called as a general term. And to be honest, all of this desktop stuff, 2D, kind of gets a little bit boring, right? We do the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah, it might be a new app, it might be a new project, it might be a new dashboard, it might be whatever it is you do, but it's still another web interface, or it's still another mobile application, right? It still is the same thing you do over and over again. And this is where I come in. Now, you could go down the virtual reality path, which I think is pretty cool. But there are certain limitations, or let's say, there's some experiences that you probably don't want to exploit your users to. Because if you start out a virtual reality experience by, scaring the bejesus out of your users, that's not what it's meant for. Has anyone here tried like a virtual reality device, like an Oculus or a Vive? Have you tried Doom on it? You know the game Doom? That's one Are you all wearing brown underwear? Like, I don't want that on my face. Right, so okay, sorry, I'll get rid of him. There's things you don't want for virtual reality, right? So there is a limit to it. I'm not saying put everything into a digital reality, but there's certainly things that could benefit from it, like old school things that you can make new again, right? I love this example. Just take something that's 20 years old and you reinvent it, and you enhance it. You make it better with VR, MR, AR. Now, does anyone know what, besides by the way, does anyone know what's inside of this? Like, how does it work? Yeah?
Camera on the outside and screens on the inside while you can look through it.
Well, that's the hardware. What makes it work? Hey?
No clue.
Exactly. I found out. It's magic. And it feels like magic. It really does. If you get a chance, I can't obviously let all of you try this today, but if you get a chance, do try one. I can talk about it and show you, but until you try it, yeah, you'll get what I mean when I say magic. All right. So let's have a look at, just kind of set the scene for where the HoloLens fits in. So there's generally 3 kinds of digital realities that we talk about. The first one is augmented reality, and I put a Google Glass on there. It could also be your phone. Apple has just announced their AR kit. Have anyone heard of that? No? But it's like an augmented reality kit, and it'll work on most newer iPhones, I believe. I haven't played with it, I haven't seen it in live, but I've seen videos of it, and it looks very impressive. It often is simple and lightweight. It is often for a mobile device. So generally you don't carry a large laptop around or anything like that. It is generally a mobile device or a small headset like the Google Glasses. And you use this to overlay data. If you think of a heads-up display in a game, like in an airline game or whatever, you have a heads-up display that gives you information. That is kind of your augmented reality definition, right? It's something that you can still see the real world, but you overlay data on it. And it's great. It is really good for a lot of things. I've seen a good example with a brochure for a yacht, a big fancy boat, and you point the device, tablet, whatever it might be, at this brochure, and the brochure is what's called the trigger point. And often you use this trigger point to trigger the experience. And in this case, the boat came out in 3D and Bob sort of sitting on the surface of the brochure. Stuff like that. It's really cool. It's very powerful. But it's kind of limited, right? It's a small experience usually that you get with augmented reality. On the other side, we have virtual reality. And that is, as it says, virtual. You remove the entire physical world that the user knows. So in this case, you isolate the user and you kind of remove them and replace the reality with something that you've made. And this is important because you can replace everything, right? You have full control of what they see and what the experience is. It's very good for prototyping. Say, an airliner. You want to get people to try flying an airliner before they fly an airliner, right? That stuff is expensive to break. Or a forklift truck. There's an Australian company that's done one for a forklift, so you learn to drive a forklift with a VR headset on, so you know where all the buttons are, where the levers do and all that stuff. That works, okay? Now, I still haven't seen one that's not tethered. Tethered meaning a cable comes out of your head using it, and it's often plugged into some nuclear power plant that sits next to you, right? They are often extremely computing intensive, these experiences, and that's okay, but that's kind of the limitation of it. And then in the middle is my baby, is what's called mixed reality. It is this device kind of only now. There's a couple other devices that are out more or less, or I've announced them at least, but this is the only one you can go out and buy today if you want to mortgage your house again. It's expensive, it's $3,000. But mixed reality is this interaction between digital and real, like digital and physical realities. This is the key. You need the interaction between the two. So this device will map your room and know exactly where all your surfaces are. Like it maps the 3D model of your room. And with that, you can have digital assets, say a ball, that you can place in this room. So for example, if I was here and I had the headset on, and it knows where the tables are, if I threw a ball, it would bounce off the table and keep bouncing, right? That's the key. The key is this interaction between the two. And there's no tethering. This is it. This is how it comes. This is the computer. It doesn't need anything else. Okay, this is important. To me, this is a deal breaker. Because I can go anywhere. I'm not limited by any cables or anything. Limited by battery life, which is about 3 hours, but still. Any questions around this? Because there usually are. Yeah, oh, there we are. Is it HX? HX. I don't know what that means. Sorry?
Is it likely to cause risk of explosion?
Oh, well, I don't know. It's a good question. That one's still okay. I don't know if it is. I don't know.
So it's not a form of proof,
Okay. Yeah, I haven't had that question before. That's a good question, though, because that would be important in certain environments, like in factories and that sort of stuff. Exactly. Yeah. What's it called again? ATEX. Can you? Yeah. Okay. Sorry? EX. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to that later. That's good. Yeah, I just hadn't heard it before. That's cool. Anyone else? No? Okay. Now, when you start developing for HoloLens, this is the most important question that you can ask. Because I see time and time again really, really nice experiences done on the HoloLens, but they're not mixed reality, right? There's a Walking with Dinosaurs game, I guess it is, but it replaces everything. Doesn't use any of the physical environment whatsoever. That's virtual reality. It looks beautiful, it works well, but why would you do that on a $3,000 device when you can do it on a $10 Google Cardboard, right? That doesn't make any sense. So you need to be very clear on what you're trying to do and how that relates to whether it's MR, AR, or VR. And there's nothing wrong with either solution. It's just you don't want to build it for the wrong reasons. Because then you end up with something that's wow factor and is all nice and pretty, and then after about 10 minutes or 10 hours or whatever it might be, people go, oh, but can't do this? And they go, no, because it's, yeah. So you know what I mean? It has to be for the right kind of reality that you're building. Yes?
I have a question. You said it was untethered.
Yes.
You could take that, not take a phone lap or anything, go to the middle of the woods and use it?
So the question is, can I take this anywhere and use it? Yes-ish. It doesn't work that well outside, mainly because of the UV light. But yeah, you can take it anywhere. And it actually remembers the spaces as well, to a certain extent. If you in your app say, I want to remember the particular space, when you come back to it, it'll know where you are and it'll put back your things and everything. But you don't need anything else at all. Has its own Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. If you need internet, you need Wi-Fi, obviously. But yeah, you don't need anything else. Anyone else? Cool. All right. That is probably the earliest photo I could find of a prototype HoloLens. Now, I can't confirm that it is, but I think it's pretty good bet that it is. Does anyone know what's on his head here? Not quite. It's a Kinect, exactly. It's an Xbox Kinect. That's where it came from. That's kind of the technology that got expanded for the 3D mapping, right? And I think that's kind of funny to see how far we've got. Because some people still complain, oh, it's a bit fragile. Yeah, but that's where we started, right? So it is a version 1 kind of, or 0.1 prototype thing. So there's still a way to go. Okay, let's talk about what it actually is just quickly here so you know what's inside of it. It is not particularly impressive in some regards, but others it is. So it has these 4 environmental cameras which sits up here. There's 2 on either side. And they use UV light to map the room with a range of about 4 or 5 meters. So you need to walk around to kind of map the room you're in if it's a larger room. It has a depth camera, so it knows how far you are away from things. It has a video camera, so you can record what you see, and I'll show you as well. You can show you on the screen what I see. And then it has 4 microphones to sit up here as well, 2 on either side. And the voice recognition in this is unbelievably accurate. It's very, very, very good. And often people don't start out with it. They start out with the emulator, which I'll show you as well, which is not as good. And they think that's a representation of how the device works, and it's not. So bear that in mind. The voice recognition is very good. Then we have the waveguides. So that's the things that sit in here. It's kind of hard to see. But there's essentially 4 lenses, and 3 of them are the RGB waveguides. That is where the hologram gets projected. So it doesn't get shot into your eyes. There's no lasers or anything like that. It is just light that is projected in front of you with the camera that sits up here. Well then, whatever that was. And it has this limited field of view, which I'll get to, which is kind of what throws off people sometimes a bit as well. It has a system on chip. It's called an Intel Cherry. I'm not a hardware guy, but I think that's not particularly impressive. It's just some standard 32-bit chip or CPU. It does have a HPU. Has anyone heard of that? HPU? A holographic processing unit. It sounds very Star Trek, doesn't it? It's a bespoke piece of hardware that Microsoft had got made for this, and it does something like 1 trillion calculations a second just for the holograms. It's specifically designated for the holograms, right? 2 gigs of RAM, not very impressive, but it's enough. I haven't seen it run over sort of 1.1 when it's really working hard. 64 gigs of storage is just for the apps and whatever you install on it, and runs Windows 10. So I have not seen a blue screen yet. Or green screen. I think they changed it to a green screen now, isn't it? But it is important that it runs Windows 10 because that's how you develop apps for it. So it uses Universal Windows Platform Apps, UWP. And those are apps that are, it's essentially a contract between Microsoft and the developer saying, hey, if you build these apps, we promise you that this core set of functions will work on anything that runs Windows 10. Doesn't matter if the Xbox or a phone or the tablet or a desktop or the Surface Hub or whatever it might be. Everything will work. Now, obviously, there's things that are bespoke, like 3D stuff for this one, or a SIM card for the phone, or whatever it might be. So those are additional on top of it. It's a family kind of API. But that's important, Windows 10, because it means that you can run Office on it, or any other Windows 10 app will run on it. All right. And finally, there are the speakers. So those are the 2 red bits on either side. There's 2 speakers on each side, and it is what's called the head-related transfer function, or binaural sound, which mimics how your ears would perceive sound from the real world incredibly well. It's spatial audio is kind of the colloquial term for it. Any questions for the hardware? It's just hardware, right? All right, and it's untethered. Of course, it's untethered. This, I can't emphasize that enough. This is so important. It means you can go all over with it inside, you know. All right, we're talking about field of view. And this is often what you see from Microsoft marketing. It's like, ooh, pretty. And obviously this is Australia because she's getting eaten by a shark. And this is not kind of what you see, though. Like, it's pretty. It's got pictures on the wall. It's got things on the floor, and there's floating things. But generally what you actually see is more like this. Okay? The field of view is quite small. It's like a letterbox in front of you. And it throws you off initially, and it's kind of annoying because you keep moving ahead and you're trying to look at everything. But it takes about 15 minutes or half an hour maybe, and you get used to it. It's fine. Okay, let me just show you a quick video of something really cool, especially if you're a nerd like me.
Sax grabbed his Xbox controller to play through a giant holographic portal into a 3D Minecraft world right on the wall. Even though I don't have a HoloLens, I'm able to play together with Sax from my Surface.
Are you going to come join my game, Lydia?
I'm in now.
I see you, jumping around.
One of the cool things about HoloLens is that it lets you display Minecraft virtually anywhere. You can get different perspectives on your Minecraft world. It's awesome to play with the controller, but could we show them something new, Sax?
Sure. Let's take our experience off the wall and then put it on the table over here. Create world. I see Lydia way up there.
As I run around and play, Sax can easily navigate and manipulate the world using his voice and his hands. He can walk around the hologram, pan around for different viewpoints, and even look inside.
How cool is that? You know, even if you don't play Minecraft, that's impressive. There was a lot of rumors that that was all fabricated and everything, but no, that is real. That is, they're doing this. Obviously, it's a very carefully orchestrated demo, but they really did do this, and that was about 2 years ago. Still haven't released Minecraft, though. So, how do we actually start building apps for this thing? There are essentially 5 things you need to take care of in a holographic app, or in a mixed reality app. The name keeps changing. The first thing you want to know is gaze. Gaze is where you're looking, but it's actually where your head is pointing, because it doesn't track eye movement, it tracks your head movement. And gaze is how you select or engage with things. So you can think of it as your mouse cursor. So your mouse cursor is controlled with your head, which is kind of odd. But depending what you look at, you get a little white cursor in front of you, and that's how you select from the start menu or in your apps, or if you're shooting robots or whatever it might be. Gaze is done with something, if you've ever done any Unity development, which is a game engine, Danish I found out, hooray, you use something called raycast. Raycast is a construct that allows you to kind of send out a ray in a direction and find out if it hits something. Are you actually looking at anything? Is there a collision with something? Now, how many here are actually writing code every day? Okay, because that's not as many as I thought. So I'm thinking, I was going to go through a demo after each. Do we still want to do that, or do you just want to see code at the end? I'm happy to do either one. Okay? Thank you, Norway. We're going to do that at the end. Okay. Because I think we'll just look at code at the end. So I'll go through the 4 different pillars, and I'll show you, okay? The next, so there's gaze. The second one is gestures. Right? Gestures is how you interact with the thing you're looking at. And you can kind of think it as your mouse buttons. So your head is your mouse cursor, or your mouse, and gestures is your mouse button. It's very mesmerizing, isn't it? How does he get that to do that? Gaze, or gestures, sorry, are captured in what's called a gesture frame, which sits sort of in front of you, which is why you often kind of see people do this. Like initially when you start using it, you want to learn this tap gesture, which is like this. That's all you do. Tap, tap, tap. But you'll be surprised, people do like this, or they have the Pac-Man, or the angry duck, or whatever it might be. It's not that simple to get initially, because it's easy. You think it's more complicated than it is. But the tap is like your mouse button press, right? You tap on things. And you can then extend that to a hold if you hold it, or then if you have a hold, you can then manipulate things or navigate in 3D space as well. So if you want to move things around, you'll kind of tap on and hold and then start moving them. But all of those are events in the code that you can manage and you can catch and you can do things with. The other gesture that you need to know, there's only two, is bloom, which is like this. You just do this from the bottom, like that. And that's either exiting the app or bringing up the start menu or closing it. So that's like an override. You can always do with that. You can never, as a developer, override the bloom gesture. Another demo slide. The third thing is, so we have gaze, we have gestures, and we have voice as the third way of providing input for the HoloLens. Now, voice, as I said, is incredibly accurate. The voice recognition on this device is very, very, very good. And it's incredibly easy to use. Right? It's really simple to implement. It's very, very, very hard to get right. Because you get a few things for free. So there's something you can say select. That's the same as tapping, because you get really sick of tapping very quickly. Like, it gets very tedious doing this all the time, right? So you can just say select. It's the same thing. You can also, there's a, I guess it's called see it, say it. So if there's an icon that has a label on it, then you can just say what that label says, and that triggers that action, which is very handy as well. So if there's a window that says remove up the top corner, you just look at the window and say remove, and it'll close it. Cortana, which any Windows Phone users? I saw one before. Oh, there's a few. Way. You may or may not be familiar with Cortana. I still don't think it works in Danish, does it? No? No. It works only in certain languages. But Cortana works as well on the device, so you can say, hey, Cortana, and she comes up and can help you with things. And then we have custom commands. And those are the ones that are actually not hard to implement. It's like, set up this recognizer, implement an anonymous function that does something, and that's about it. But getting that design of that command right is really tricky. But I won't go into details on that today. Actually, I will, because the slide was there. Sorry. For speech design, because I knew there was designers here as well, or people that are, non-coders. This is really hard to get right, because there's so many things you need to think about when you design your speech, or your voice recognition, and your voice commands. What action could be taken through speech? Is it a good option for completing a task? Because it might not be, it might not make sense. But if you skip 6 taps with a single voice command, it's a good idea. All right? How does a user know when speech input is available? This is this education part. How do users know they can say, whatever command it is you set up? How do you let them know? How do you create a tutorial or a pop-up tooltip or whatever it might be? Because that's hard without it being annoying or being too often and not often enough, all those things. Is the app always listening? Because by default, it'll always listen for voice commands. But what if you wanted to have a scenario where it shouldn't listen? You need to take it into account as well. What phrases? So I do a workshop for HoloLens development, and we built this little app that shoots some balls and some squares and stuff. And you get sick of shooting balls, right? So we thought, let's do a voice command. And often people say, hey, let's just make the command shoot. But it's too short. Shoot can easily be misinterpreted, or it can be said differently in different dialects, or there can be a sudden noise that comes in and kind of warps the sound, whatever. It's much better to say shoot ball, because it has context, it's longer, it's 3 or 4 syllables, 2 actually, but it's 2 words. And that just gets picked up much more reliably. So you don't want to make them sentences either, because no one can remember them, but you don't want to make them single words either. Interaction dialogue, if you need context between the questions, implied context, you need to program for that as well, or design for it. And then network connectivity, because we always forget that some things need network connectivity. Okay, another demo slide, but I'll look at the code in a second. All right, sound. So this is what I was talking about before. It has the speakers on either side, 2 on either side, and it's an extremely important part of the HoloLens experience, much more so than any voice command or even gestures often. Because the whole idea with this is that we want to make a experience that is realistic. We want to convince people that this is real, right? We don't want it to look like a cartoon necessarily. We want people to believe that things are happening in their space. And we do that a lot with audio, okay? We say, okay, well, we need to apply realistic sounds or audio tracks to whatever it is that we're building. Because otherwise, how do we convince people? We need to maintain this illusion that everything is in the same space, in the same reality. And it is done really easily. All you have to know is this. Yeah, no, I don't know what this means, to be honest. This came from Wikipedia, but it is apparently the equation for head-related transfer function, which is what you get for free. And my point is, this is what you get for free. It's relatively complex mathematics that allows you to calculate where sound is coming from in a 3D space, but the framework does all that for you. All you have to do is take a sound, attach it to a 3D model, and off you go. It really is that simple. And again, the sound design is much harder in this case. So I like this slide better, because it kind of just says, yep, you get it, off you go. Okay? And something like, just an example, if you do spatial audio, be careful with something like ambient noise. It's very, very, let's say, tempting to take some sort of background music and put it in because it sounds nice and you gets your atmosphere. But listening to the same 2 minutes over and over and over again in your head all the time is really annoying, right? It's unless you're doing a game that may have some sort of theme music, be really careful with something like background audio. Or what about if you have, 20 different holograms in the same room? Do they all emit noise? Like, at what point do you stop or tether them off or whatever it might be? So there's a real design issue, just like with voice commands for audio as well. Yes.
I have a question regarding game programming.
Mm-hmm.
What's the latency? Could I set up a simulated tennis match between two players wearing HoloLens?
So what's the?
Is it fast enough that if I simulate shooting a ball, the other player wearing the other HoloLens, and then also simulate he taps it down?
So the question is, what happens if you have a? Well, exactly. It's you're asking about latency, but I think the real question actually, if you have a collaboration-ish, experience, if there's more than one HoloLens in the same experience, what's the latency like? I haven't tried with a tennis match as such, but the actual shared experience is really good. You do need a separate server that does all the calculation and sends out the shared experience, but it is very, very real time. So, but I don't know exactly with the tennis matches that would work, but it is quite real time. Yeah, the latency is not there really, because it's a local network as well. And then I just realized that I put this picture in because it's from Denmark, and I always do this presentation somewhere else. But spatial mapping is the most important thing of the whole HoloLens experience of mixed reality. Without spatial mapping, there is no HoloLens. And the spatial mapping is how you take the room you're in and map it with UV light, translate it into a 3D coordinate that is relational to the 3D coordinate of each hologram. It's really heavy mathematics, and again, luckily you don't have to worry much about it. But the way that it does it is that it scans the room consistently. Now, it doesn't do it in live, it doesn't do it every single frame, but it'll do it every 5, 10, 20 seconds, okay? So sometimes you'll get this ghosting effect. Unfortunately, if people walk past, it'll map people as they walk past, and suddenly you got this ghost for a few seconds, and it's odd. But that does happen. But spatial mapping is very good on it. Very, very good. I could do a whole talk on spatial mapping, but I won't. Okay. So, should we look at just a little bit of code? Is that all right? Yeah? Okay. There's more people saying yes. Ooh. I think the Norwegian in you is going away. Okay. So I'm just going to show you briefly here. So this is Unity, okay? If you haven't seen Unity before, it's a game engine, essentially, and it allows you to build 2D or 3D experiences or games. Well, we don't talk about games necessarily with HoloLens because there's a lot more than games. Now, I'm not going to go through every single aspect of Unity, and I'm certainly not a Unity expert by any means, but this is the tool you'll need to use unless you're really, really good at maths and direct 3D and that sort of stuff. In this case, we have let me just see here. We have a 3D little sample app here called Origami, which is on the Microsoft Developer Portal, so you can just download it if you want to play with it. And it has a few items in it. I can click on the balls here, and it'll show that it's sphere number 2, and it kind of relates to that. And then you get all sorts of things over here that makes you really worried, because when you start using this, there's so many things going on all the time. The best advice I can give is, if you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. Okay? Because if it is important, it'll become obvious very quickly. And there are so many things here that just every time you click on something different, that pane will change, right? Every time I click on anything, you know, if I do the, you know, up here, whatever, this thing just keeps changing, okay? It's meant to, it's all right. So that's Unity. I'm not going to go through much more on Unity, just so you know what it looks like. The way that you apply any of these gaze, gesture, voice, audio to your elements is it's essentially drag and drop. Like the coding part of this is not difficult. So I have these, you know, scripts down here that are written. You can see an example of it here, and the beautiful syntax highlighting that is Unity. And you just drag them on wherever you want them to be. That's it. Drag them up there, and you drop it. I won't do it now, but you'll drop it, and it'll stay there, right? So if I click on any of these spheres, you can see that it has sphere commands, sphere sounds. Those are scripts that have been attached to those. And then when stuff happens to that object, there might be an event handler on it or something that says, oh, I know what to do with that action or that whatever happened, and it can react to it accordingly. That's kind of the model. It's all scripts that are attached to models everywhere. So scripts can talk to each other as well, and that's when it starts getting a little bit complex. And if you need to bubble messages from one script to another on a different model, you know, yeah, it can get a bit complex. But in general, you write a script, you attach it to something, and you can do stuff. It is quite straightforward. So the scripts themselves, I'll just really quickly show you each of the you know, especially gaze, gesture, and voice. So is this for gaze here? We have what's called a world cursor. That's just a normal class. And if you write C#, I'm guessing you guys write C#, the people that write code. This should be really quite simple. It shouldn't be very scary, okay? If you don't write code, just go on Facebook or something. It's okay. You know, I'll just go through this in a little bit of detail. So in every Unity script that you attach to something, you have a start and an update function. The start function gets called when the model is initialized, and you can set up things like, you know, materials and renders and whatever you might want to play with. Update is the other one that gets called every single frame. So it's 60 times a second. HoloLens runs at 60 hertz all the time. If you don't run at 60 hertz, you're doing something wrong, or you need to change something. Your testing needs to improve, or whatever it might be, because you most likely will either not convince people that it's real because the refresh rate won't keep up to what people are looking at, or even worse, you might make people sick because things are not in sync with the real world. So update runs every single frame, which is 60 times a second. And in here we just do this physics.raycast. I was talking about raycast before for your gaze, and that's just a boolean that returns true or false. If I'm looking at something, it returns me an object that says, what did I hit? And then we can set this mesh render, that's, you know, do we show the thing or not? A mesh render is like the actual physical form of the thing, of your 3D model. And then you set the position of it to wherever you were looking at. So in other words, we're taking our cursor, we're showing it, and then we're placing it on what we're looking at. Okay? That's all we're doing. It's pretty straightforward, hopefully. And then if we're not looking at anything, we just remove it. We're not showing the cursor. That's all it does. Okay? So I'll try and show you here what it looks like. So here's the emulator. I'll move it in a little bit in the middle here. I hit start, so that brings up the start menu. Normally you'd do this, obviously, the bloom, right? But I only have the emulator. And I can use the arrow keys and the WASD to move around a 3D axis. And then I can open up the origami example. Place it somewhere. Great sounds, aren't they? And then this starts up the origami experience that we're just looking at. Yes. And here it is. So I can move again. I can move back and forwards and side to side just with my arrow keys. And if I look at something, see the ring? It follows the surface of whatever I'm looking at, right? That's all we're doing. So it's, you know, I could go closer if you want to. So there's my cursor. It's just a ring. Okay? And as I look at other things, it just attaches. There's a wall over there. That's why it's looking at that. So that's gaze. Questions? I know it's a bit quick, but it's pretty simple from a programming point of view. The next part of it is gestures. And that's your tap, or your hold, or your manipulate, or your navigate. Again, you can't capture this. You can't do anything with the home or the bloom. That's just default. Right? So as a developer, you don't get any control over that. But you can set up your gaze gesture manager, again, just a standard object. And that has all of the different events on it. gaze gesture recognizer. That has all the different events on it. So in this case, we set a tapped event on it, an anonymous function saying, hey, send a message on select. So in other words, whatever we're looking at, when I tap on it, I send that message to it on select. So that's the start method. And then in update, we just figure out if we're looking at something. It's the same code as before. Are we looking at an object or not? Because if we're not looking at an object, there's no point in sending the message, right? And then we start it up down here. If we're looking at something, if we're not looking at anything, then we start and stop the gestures. And in here, so this is attached to my spheres, which are these. If I hit enter on the keyboard, that's the same as tapping. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, I didn't show you actually, hang on. I missed one bit. In sphere commands, the onSelect, which is up here, so I'm sending the onSelect to whatever I'm tapping on, in this case, the sphere. When the sphere gets an onSelect, in here, it says if it doesn't have the component rigid body, it applies rigid body. Rigid body is physics. So right now they're floating. So what do you reckon happens when I tap on it? It falls down, exactly. So I'm on here, I tap on it. Sound design, right? It falls down. So that's your gestures. I just tapped on it. This would work the same way if I deployed to the HoloLens. I would tap on it. It would float in midair. I could tap on it. It would roll on wherever it hits. It will just roll off, right? And then we have the voice commands, which is in the speech manager part of it here. So there are, again, it's very simple to implement, very difficult to get right usually. We have a keyword recognizer, and we give that some keywords. In this case, we have 2. We have, and probably do it now because it's listening, reset world and drop sphere. Reset world will send a broad. I said drop sphere. Let's just move away here. There we go. Okay then. Right. So it has those 2. One of them, which is that first one, which I won't say now because it's going to do it again, is on reset. And you broadcast that message. It means all the child elements of whatever it is you're looking at will get this message, right? And the other one is the drop part of it, and that will send an on drop, which if you looked at the code would just go back to on tap or on select. It just calls that method. So in this case, on reset is again in our sphere commands, and it's down here, and it destroys the object and it puts it back. Right, so we have a reference to where it was originally. We just get rid of it and put it back up again. That's all it does. So we can reset the game. And again, on drop here just runs on select. That's all it does. So in my thing here, I can say reset world. It comes back up. Right? And if I go over again here, I can say drop sphere. Only works every second time. Drop sphere. Yeah, and this is the experience people get and think that's how the HoloLens works. But I'm going through no, seriously, because I go through my laptop mic, which is nowhere near as good as what's on that. Let's try again, last time. Drop sphere. Reset world. Because that's just annoying. There you go, it did work. I'm not going to go through the sounds necessarily, because all you do is you add sound to it. The audio design is more in actually what audio you assign to it. Obviously, that's terrible audio design, because that's just annoying. That's a paper ball making that sound. Really? So that's the code part of it. That's all I'm going to go through. Any questions for that? Yes?
Yeah. You're developing on Unity. Can you do the same with Unreal or Simulate?
So the question is, I'm using Unity. Can you use any other 3D animation program? You can. Unity is now so heavily integrated with the HoloLens toolkit that it's really hard. I have seen one example of someone using Maya to use it, which Maya is more of a 3D modeling tool, which I thought was interesting, not so much a game engine. But I would say yes, you can. I don't know how you do it though. But
is there any form of node-based programming where you have to have any coding experience using nodes like Unreal and some of the other game engines out there?
So the question again, can you use kind of a node-based behavior, mainly for behaviors, right? So if this happened, drag this thing over here, and this happened. You get like a grid of what happens. I haven't seen that for Unity. I don't think you can. It's not real nerdy either, is it? No, yeah, that's a good question. It probably is coming. Like they keep pushing out versions of Unity, and that's one of the problems because it keeps changing. So every 2 months or so, there's another version of Unity, and they are improving it, absolutely. But they also keep breaking things that you then have to, oh, what happened now? So that is kind of being an early adopter. You got to live with that. Okay. So that's the code. Just to really, just to give you a little bit of a taste of, it's not scary. You can get into trouble, especially with the hierarchy in Unity. That gets me every time when I send a message to something that's not at the, it's not either not the child or it's not in the same tree structure or whatever it might be. That's usually where I get caught up. Okay, so what about pharma? See all of the tablets? Because you guys obviously, I would say all of you work in the pharmaceutical industry, is that right? That was been my assumption, right? And there are some really cool things that I've now come across by researching this that I want to show you. So this is the first video that I found. This is just AR, okay? This is augmented reality, but it's showing, you probably know better than me what it's showing, but it's some sort of genetic structure or, medicinal, whatever it is. I'm not an expert here, I don't know. Sorry? Anyone knows what it is? Oh, you do? Oh, very good. It's one of them, whatever he said. And this, I just want to show you what an AR experience would be like, okay? So then if you move on from that, there's this guy. And hopefully there's audio in this, there should be.
Here I have on Microsoft's HoloLens, so everything you see is exactly what I see. So let's pull up manuals, which is our process and workflow aid. We use it to then be able to work completely hands-free while still having the information that we need. So here's our first step in the process. I need to ensure that the bioreactor is clean. Say that this is in the way. I'm going to move it a little bit closer to my bioreactor that I have here, where I'm changing the filter housing, which is what I'm looking at right now. So now the benefit of this, though, is that I can work completely hands-free. So I can hold this filter while still being able to read the information that I actually need for it to get the job done. And I can even use voice commands. Next step. Now I can see exactly what I need to see. Oh look, there's even a little picture attached to this step. Show picture. Okay, so that's what the filter housing looks like. Very cool. But you know what? I can't really tell what it looks like in real life to compare it against my filter. Show 3D. Oh, there we go. Okay, well this makes more sense. I can even walk around it. Yeah, this looks like the filter that I need. Next step. Oh, what is that? Oh no, it looks like I have a little warning over here. Oh geez, there's water on the floor. Oh boy, I better contact utilities immediately. The benefit of HoloLens, though, is that it knows where I'm looking, so that it can actually warn me to look in this direction exactly where I have the water spill. So, report.
It's pretty cool, eh? Yeah, I know it's a little bit contrived. It's a demo. But you get the idea that you can have actual process equipment that will, inform you about things. And there are ways that you can do object recognition as well. So you could have an object modeled like whatever it is they're looking at. When it sees this object, it'll actually recognize it and show whatever it is that's relevant at that time. So, and because it also knows where you are, you might even have it as it doesn't have GPS, I should say that, but it does know where you are in a 3D model, and you can model that out so that it gives you ideas of what image you need to show or what's wrong with it, where to get the data from. Now this is obviously a demo, so I found one that isn't a demo necessarily. This guy is actually in a processing facility. And I've taken the sound off because it was loud. Like there's actual machinery going and it was very loud, so I kind of went, okay, let's not. But what he's doing is he's looking at some guy working and obviously has his screens there, but he also has the holograms floating above him that's relevant to what this guy's doing. So that's the thing, you do look like a bit of a idiot when you do this, but you'll get used to it. So he's manipulating 3D holograms while the guy's working or whatever it is, and he can then manage whatever it is he needs to do. I mean, I don't pretend to understand what these systems are, but it is kind of an extra level of management input, or information you can get just from walking around the hall, and you still have your hands free. Okay? See that? I think that's it. maybe. Yeah, question. Can you scan a barcode? I'm going to say yes. I haven't done it, but it does have a camera in it, and you can take pictures and everything, so I don't see why not. So obviously, and it's Windows 10, so you would find an API for it somewhere that you can, interpret an image as a barcode. So it doesn't have a barcode scanner, but you can do like you do with a phone. Yep, you can do that. Absolutely. Anyone else? Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's full connectivity. So if you run with it with Wi-Fi connectivity, you can absolutely talk to whatever system it is. And if you have the context of what you're looking at, well, you might also be able to know what's wrong with it, maybe, if you have that data, or what parts go with that. So yeah, you can, for sure. Yes?
Can you do recognition? For instance, you say we have to map the space,
Mm-hmm.
and we have certain product equipment at that space. Then we have go to another facility that uses the same types of equipment. Do we need to map that space also, or will it be able to say, oh, I already know what that machine looks like because you told me once, so when I see it in another place, I can recognize it?
So the question, let me try and rephrase it to make sure I understand it, is that if you have already mapped one facility with equipment and objects, if you find a different facility, so a different physical location, but it has the same content, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You will have to map that again, because it's always going to be slightly different. The objects that you want to recognize have to be predefined. So you can't sort of magically know what things are. So you'll have to model them first, and then put the image of whatever you're trying to recognize into the application, and it'll then know, oh, there it is, and you can then show the model on it. So there's a bit of groundwork to do first. Yeah. Yes?
How sensible is it if you have an object and there's suddenly a cable hanging in front of the object? Would it recognize the object?
So if there's a cable in front of me when I'm using it, would it...
Or in front of the object?
In front of the object, would it recognize it still?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Probably. I mean, that really has to be trial and error. I'm not sure, 100% sure. Obviously, the more stuff that makes it look not like the object you're expecting, the less likely it is to recognize it. But it is quite... the stuff I've seen with a company called Vuforia, Vuforia, has been very, very good, very accurate. But obviously what they put online is very contrived, and it always works, right? So I'm not sure what the fault rate is. Good question, though.
Because on a filter,
Mm-hmm.
you could turn the filter housing.
Yep.
And it would look different.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not going to venture a guess. But I would say you could pull it off somehow. But that's the gut feel. Yes?
Back on the same question. Refreshing all the time, scanning.
Uh-huh.
At what rate is it refreshing when it does the scan of the room? The detail is getting better and better as it scans.
No, it doesn't get better and better. No. The triangles that you get... so I tried mapping a toy car for another project, say about that size, the sort of largest toy cars. That came out as a blob. Like, you can't see wheels and doors and windows and all that stuff on it. You could see a kind of a car shape, but it's meant, like, if I map this room, you could absolutely see where people are, where chairs are, where tables are, and all that. It's very good at that, but smaller details, not so much. I believe you can vamp up the level of detail, but obviously that takes more memory, more battery power, and all that stuff as well.
So I saw a demo in Venice with a device scanning with HoloLens was updating the mesh along he was looking at.
Okay, well that's probably in code that he's doing that. You have control over that in your application. Yeah. All right. I'm just going to keep going for a bit because there's a couple more things I want to show you. This is probably the most appropriate to what I was told you guys might be looking for. This is a consultancy in Switzerland called XYZ that has done this demo. It's all, there's no speaking or anything, so it's just this guy comes out on site, got a HoloLens. He then doesn't know what to do, so he requests support from the Home Office. And then, there we go. He gets so that's the request sent off. The guy in the office then sits there, and he gets very excited apparently. Woo! So he picks up, that's a VR headset, right? So he's in virtual reality, and he's got his hand controllers. So one guy's in MR with the HoloLens, another guy's in virtual reality. So then this guy puts on his HoloLens, so that he can map that room. He can map whatever it is he's looking at. And then the guy in VR can then see what he's mapped. So he's sent back the model, and he can then draw on it, and he can see where the guy is. You see there was a head floating, and then the guy with the HoloLens can then see in a minute. He then see, that's his vision. He can see what the other guy's drawing at, so he can help him in full 3D. Problem solved. Stop. Yes?
Are there any limitations for people with long-sightedness or short-sightedness? Because I noticed the guy with VR was wearing glasses.
Yep.
But the guy using the HoloLens didn't wear glasses. Is there any limitations for people with vision?
No, you just wear your normal glasses. Yeah, it fits over most glasses. If you're really hipster and have those big, rim glasses, maybe it doesn't work. But like with most glasses, it does work. I always have my glasses on. I don't ever take them off. So obviously with VR it might be different, but for the HoloLens certainly. Does that make sense? Does that has application to what you guys were looking for? Kinda. All right. Thanks, Norway. One more example of what I think is probably the most advanced demo I've seen of the HoloLens. This does require an enormous amount of equipment, unfortunately.
Hi, today we're going to show you an exciting new technology that could fundamentally change the way that people will communicate in the future. Imagine being able to virtually teleport from one space to another in real time. Hey, Sergio. How does it feel like to be holoported?
It feels great to be holoported.
So Sergio is to wear his HoloLens device, and I'm going to wear mine. We can see each other in full 3D in real time. We can interact and communicate as if we're co-present. Sergio, can you walk around my space? Can you walk behind this chair? So we're doing everything to give the impression that Sergio and I are present in the same space. Sergio, let's just do a high five. That's great. Thank you, Sergio. We call this technology holoportation.
And obviously you need an awful lot of cameras, and I bet you that other guy's in the next room just for the amount of data transfer. But they're improving this, and they now have holoportation in cars. So guys being holoported while he sits in a car to some other room. So they are working on it, especially the data transfer and the compression rate of data. Okay, now I really want to show you how this thing works, because I think that's why you're here, right? So this is always the best. Now this is a game called RoboRaid, and I always say HoloLens is not a gaming device, but in this case it's probably the best example of mixed reality I can give you in like 5 minutes, okay? So, give me 2 seconds, I'll make sure this is on. I can go to something called the HoloLens Developer Portal. So I'll put this on. Yeah. So now you can see what I see. Hey. So there's the start menu, right? It's just floating in front of me. There's a little bit of a delay, but you get the idea. So I can use Bloom to get rid of the menu. About a second delay, I can put it back up, right? So you get, these gestures are quite easy. Now I've cheated a bit because I put already the RoboRaid game over here.
Weapon systems online. Shields engaged. They'll be here any second. Brace yourself.
That robot's going to come up the wall, right? That's alright, I won't hit you more, it's okay. So I got to shoot these, right? Now I haven't mapped this completely that well, because obviously they're running into the ceiling. If I'd mapped the whole room, it would have been a better experience, but it's still going.
Nice move.
And the cool thing is I can walk over this wall, right?
Keep it up, and we'll both make
I
it
can look
through.
in through it, I can see in through the wall, even though there's no wall. Oh, they came over here now.
Aerial attack incoming.
They're going to shoot at me. Again, I can look at everything.
Look out!
So on and so forth. Ooh, I got hit there.
You must avoid their fire.
You get the idea, right? That is mixed reality. You see how it interacts with the physical space? Stuff comes out of the walls. It's using, if I'd mapped it correctly, they would have been crawling on the ceiling and everything. But that is the best example I can give you in about, what was that, 3 minutes or something? And then just before we end, I know Morden's ready to jump in. Ooh. It's easy to get started. If you do want to develop for this, you can download everything for free. That origami example I showed you, you build that using the tutorial. It's just a couple of hours of your time, and you get a really good idea of how you develop for HoloLens. So who am I? I always do this at the end. As Morten was saying, I'm Microsoft MVP, means they give me stickers, blue ones, about this size. I write a blog because I do like sharing whatever it is I learn. I'm starting to do a bit of robotics stuff. Little dude named Cosmo that is very temperamental that you can code with Python. I run a podcast. If you want to know more about stuff I find really cool, interesting topics, I do this with a guy in Alaska that I've never met, which is another interesting aspect of it. This is the beauty of Twitter. And I do Pluralsight courses. I think you have Pluralsight here, some subscription. And if you really want to know more about this, I have a course there as well about HoloLens development as well. And now it's your turn to try and out. So thank you very much.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Lars, for this interesting presentation.
No worries.
As earlier mentioned, Lars is now available 15 minutes, half an hour for questions, if anybody. But we will end this session as it is right now. But feel free to come up here and join him for questions. Thank you very much for participation, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.